For thousands of years, harpies have terrified travelers. Creatures that wait silently on cliffs before descending from the sky, stealing food and carrying people away. Hi, my name is Sophia and I'm a biologist. Harpies are one of the oldest monsters in European mythology, appearing everywhere from ancient Greece to Dante's Inferno and, more recently, Dungeons & Dragons. But there's one problem. Humans aren't built to fly. So today, I'm going to try to answer a simple question. If evolution really tried to build a flying humanoid, what would it actually look like? Part 1. The Myth and the D&D version. Harpies are legendary figures from Greek and Roman mythology, depicted as winged women, sometimes with ugly faces or with the lower bodies of birds. Originally conceived as personification of the stormy winds, these creatures evolved into repulsive monsters known for stealing food and punishing criminals on divine orders. They were known as the Hounds of Zeus and were sent by the god to snatch people and things from the earth. The most famous myth involving Harpies is that of Phineus. They were sent by the gods as a punishment to harass and blind Phineus, and whenever a meal was placed before him, they darted down from the air and carried it off. Later writers add that they either devoured the food themselves or that they dirtied it by dropping some stinking substance on it, so as to render it unfit to be eaten. They appear in Dante's Inferno, in the seventh circle, and are described as having broad wings with razor-sharp talons and a human neck and face, clawed feet, and swollen feathered bellies. In Dungeons & Dragons, harpies have the upper body of a female humanoid with unkempt hair and black eyes, and the lower body of a reptilian creature with scaly legs and clawed hands and feet. Harpies do not wear clothing, but they may adorn themselves with jewelry taken from their victims. There are no physical differences between male and female harpies, which has led to the misconception that only female harpies exist. Harpies are described as sadistic creatures who take immense pleasure in torturing and killing their victims, but they are not particularly intelligent creatures. The most striking and dangerous feature of this creature is its luring song. This magical melody can affect all non-harpies up to 300 feet away, forcing those who fail their saving throw into a trance. Victims are compelled to walk directly toward the harpy by the shortest route until they are within its reach, at which point they are completely at the monster's mercy. Part 2. Biology and Behavior. In D&D, harpies can lay eggs from the age of 2, produce up to 20 eggs in a lifetime, but only around 3 successfully hatch. Most die between 25 and 30 years old, despite a potential lifespan of 50. They live in groups of 6 or more in marshlands or coastal caves, preferably near well-traveled routes, which tell us something important about their hunting strategy. They don't chase prey, they wait for prey to come to them. And this makes total sense if we think about their physiology and energy consumption. The largest bird that ever flew was Argentavis magnificens, a prehistoric raptor from the Miocene with a wingspan of around 6 to 7 meters. And even with wings that size, it couldn't take off from flat ground. It had to run downhill or use thermal currents to stay airborne. It was a glider, not a true flyer. Argentavis magnificens weighed more or less the same as a human, so it is to be expected that harpies would need wings of that size just to be able to glide. However, a human body was not designed to fly, and it would need major adaptations. Powered flight, the kind that lets you take off from the ground and chase prey, would require a completely different body plan. In other words, evolution has already shown us what the largest flying animal looks like, and it doesn't look anything like a human. Which brings us to the arms. During medieval times, harpies weren't depicted with both arms and wings. They had wings instead of arms. And biologically, that makes much more sense. Bat wings are not separate from their arms. The wings are the arms, with fingers extended to form the wing membrane. A harpy would face the same constraint. She could have wings or she could have hands, not both. Then there's bone density. The longest bones in birds are pneumatic bones, hollow, hair-filled structures that provide a continuous flow of breath throughout their bodies to increase the efficiency of the respiratory system. A harpy would need the same adaptation throughout their skeleton. The musculature would also be unrecognizable. A harpy's chest muscles would need to be massively overdeveloped, and their internal organs would need to be reorganized to make room. A harpy would need a larger heart and larger lungs to be able to flap its wings, and a torso shaped around supporting wings rather than arms. At that point, the human silhouette we associate with harpies would be gone. So it makes total sense that harpies would wait for their prey. Flying would be metabolically extremely expensive. A harpy that had to chase every meal would burn more energy hunting than she'd gain from the kill. Ambush predation, combined with the ability to glide rather than truly fly, would be a much more sustainable strategy. And just as in the myth of Phineus, it is more likely that the harpies stole food rather than hunted constantly. Not only does this prevent them from completely driving a prey away from the usual hunts, but it also requires less energy. And talking about the myth of Phineus, the harpies didn't just steal his food, they contaminated it. That's a really interesting biological trait that I think doesn't get the attention it should. Maybe harpies have glands that produce secretions to mark their food, or perhaps their claws are so contaminated with microbes and pathogens from the carcasses they eat that any food touched by a harpy would be dangerous to consume. And then there's the singing. Harpies in D&D use their voices as a weapon, luring prey towards them. Biologically, this fits perfectly with a creature that can't afford to expend energy chasing things. Instead of hunting, they call and wait. Part 3. Building a biologically accurate harpy. So, what would a biologically accurate harpy actually look like? Probably much less human than we're used to. The first thing to disappear would be the arms. A vertebrate only has one pair of forelimbs, and in a flying animal, those limbs become wings. A harpy would therefore have wings instead of arms, much like birds and bats. Those wings would need to be enormous. A wingspan comparable to Argentavis, around 6 or 7 meters, would probably be the minimum needed for a creature with a human-sized body to glide efficiently. Their chest would be dominated by powerful flight muscles attached to a large keeled sternum, while their skeleton would be filled with pneumatic bones to reduce weight. Their heart and lungs would also be much larger than ours to sustain the enormous energetic demands of flight. The legs, on the other hand, would resemble those of a bird of prey far more than a human's. Strong feet would allow them to perch safely on cliffs for hours while waiting for prey, and sharp claws would be far more useful than hands for capturing struggling victims. The face could remain human, but probably without ears, because they would create drag. Forward-facing eyes would provide excellent depth perception during flight, while a powerful voice would become their primary hunting weapon, allowing them to lure prey without wasting precious energy. So how does this change the way you use them in your world? Maybe your harpies are only able to glide, or maybe they don't actually have hands. If you want to go deeper into building species that actually make sense, check out my previous videos on pixies, vampires, and merfolk. And if there's a creature you want me to cover next, let me know in the comments. Now, go create!